From 2Keto LLC, it's Keto Woman Podcast with Daisy Brackenhall.
Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. Keto has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman Podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs to 20 grams or less per day, so things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like dairy. Moderate protein scaled to your lean body mass, and then fat to satiety. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you, make your own personalised keto. I'll be asking my guests each week what their keto looks like, to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we can't give you medical advice. It's always best to work with your own doctor because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Thanks, Katie Quigley, for supporting me and this podcast by making a pledge at my Patreon page. Do you want to hear your name here at the top of the show? Are you enjoying this podcast and would like to help me make more episodes? Then head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/KetoWoman. Or hit the support button on the Keto Women Podcast website. It means a great deal to me, and you will get to headline the show just like Katie did today. This week's extraordinary woman is Debbie Wagner. Debbie is a 52-year-old mother of two. She's a physician's assistant and really enjoys the science behind keto and fasting. She suffered from disordered eating and an essential tremor. Keto, she says, has healed her and has also helped with menopausal symptoms. Her body composition improves with each fast, and she certainly doesn't miss her tremor. Debbie has learned much from her keto journey and is keen to share her knowledge with others. She started a website to help people feel great as they get older. No more diets, it's time to become FatFueled. Her website is called FatFueled at 50. Welcome, Debbie, to the Keto Women Podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm so thrilled to be here with you. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here today. Why don't you share a bit about yourself with the listeners?
Oh, I would love to. So I am a 52-year-old woman. I'm a physician's assistant. I have two kids, a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old. I play tennis avidly. And I suffered with bulimia for, I'd say, most of my life until I discovered keto, which led me down the whole rabbit hole of keto and fasting. And I decided to share this all with a website called FatFueledAt50.com. And I just wanted to get on here and talk because I think it's extraordinary how keto has not only healed my bulimia, but I was also developing an essential tremor that was affecting my work because I was sewing wounds closed as a physician's assistant. And I do believe it was the fasting that helped, but fasting and keto kind of go hand in hand. And so that's basically me in a nutshell.
Great. And when you say essential tremor, is that medical speak for a particular kind of tremor?
An essential tremor just basically means that it has an unknown cause. The etiology is unknown. It's just one of those tremors that doesn't have a cause, but it gets progressively worse. I noticed my twin sister has it and my mom has it. And it was getting to the point where I'm not nervous sewing, but it looks like I'm nervous. My hand was literally shaking. And so that's not exactly how I started with the keto and the fasting, but a happy coincidence, fasting heals the brain, which is also healing my tremor.
How long had you had that tremor for then?
It started probably when I was 40-ish, low 40s. I always kind of noticed it. I mean, I never had the steadiest of all hands, but in my 40s, it started getting worse. And then progressively from there, worse. Each year I noticed, wow, this is not good. When I turned 50, basically, always looking for the next best diet, the next best thing out there. You know, your body composition changes. You get fat where you didn't think you should have fat. And I was searching the web for answers and discovered fasting. Fasting's how it all started. I bought the book, The Complete Guide to Fasting with Dr. Fung and Jimmy Moore, and the science just clicked for me. As a physician's assistant, I'm like, aha, yeah, I get this. But along with that, if you're on a ketogenic diet, fasting just comes naturally after some time. Without all the glucose, you become a fat burner. And so that's how I discovered ketogenic diet, was through fasting. You know, you have to practice fasting. You start with 1 day fast, and then you can go to a 3-day fast. Happy coincidence, I noticed my tremor just starting to get less and less. It's kind of magnificent. And then I thought, I have to share this with the world. And I thought, you know, also with fasting, your body composition changes. You get muscle where you should have muscle, and little pockets of body fat went away with each fast. And so now I'm just trying to share it with the world and talk to you about it. And
all in all, yes, it was a good thing. And you mentioned that change, the menopausal change.
Oh, yeah.
So that started for you at about 50?
50. Yeah. I didn't even have the perimenopausal symptoms.
Really? You just went straight in?
I just, like at 50, I had a period, and then the next month I didn't. And the hot flashes started, the whole thing. And I noticed a huge improvement with ketogenic diet and hot flashes, and all the menopausal symptoms just went away. I can't even remember the last time. I started keto exactly 7 months ago, and I haven't had a hot flash since.
That's definitely a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, such a bonus.
I've started experiencing those, and they're not much fun.
They're not fun. Middle of the night, I was soaking wet, thinking, what the heck is going on here? Yeah, they're not fun.
Yeah, not fun at all. So let's rewind a bit. You mentioned about having an eating disorder and suffering from bulimia. Mm-hmm. How far back does that go?
Well, college. So I was 20, let's say 20. I don't remember which year in college it exactly started. I had a crazy roommate that I lived with, and she was bulimic, and I thought, wow, I can eat whatever I want. And I literally taught myself how to be a bulimic. It's awful.
Had you had weight issues leading up to that?
Yeah, I always thought I was fat. Looking back at the pictures, I was not.
I was going to say, yeah, that's the key phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
I thought I'm exactly the same. You know, I thought I was too. And you're not fat at all, but that was the lead in, basically.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I was fat, and that's when the low-fat diets were around. And so I would just, looking back, I was starving myself. I would, I would eat low fat, high carbohydrate, and run. I was a very avid runner throughout college. So I was dieting and running and then purging because I was starving myself. And then I bumped into a roommate who was bulimic, and I thought, oh, there's my answer. I could eat whatever I want when I'm starving, and then I'll just purge it out. And it does take over. It's actually horrible to think about. When I look back at my college years, it just, very, very upsetting. But that stuck with me for years and years and years, up until the point of recently. On and off. It wasn't every single day, but I suffered with bulimia I remember being pregnant thinking, oh, I should purge. I didn't because I was pregnant, but my whole life I suffered with binging and purging and all that stuff that's very embarrassing to talk about. I actually just, I don't like talking about it, but it's something that now that I discovered keto and I realized it pretty much cured me, Not pretty much. I'm going to go out there and say it cured me. I haven't had an experience in 7 months since I started keto. And I think it's just fueling the brain with the healthy fats. And there's just no need for it, you know?
Yeah, it's important. I appreciate you sharing, because I can understand how difficult it is to talk about. But I think with a lot of eating disorders,
there's shame that comes with it.
Yeah. And because of that, you tend to become isolated and you don't talk about it. And so you don't necessarily think you're the only one, because you know you're not the only one, but you don't generally talk to other people about it. So when you hear a podcast like this one, with someone speaking about it publicly and sharing it and saying how hard it was, but saying, well, this is something that helped. This is something that got rid of it for me.
That's exactly why I'm here.
It's going to be really meaningful. So
you hit the nail on the head. It's very lonely. It's very isolating.
And there is no shame in it. You talk about feeling shame, but the truth is there is no shame.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because it feels just embarrassing, and I did have a lot of shame with it.
And did you end up with any of the side effects that you can? I know you can have problems with reflux and problems with the esophagus and throat.
Yeah, I had reflux, and then I was listening to a podcast, one of my most favorite things to do, and reflux is actually a symptom from your acid being too low in your stomach, and that made perfect sense to me. My PA mind went, oh yeah, duh, I'm getting rid of all my acid.
Yeah, you've been messing with it for decades. No wonder the balance is off.
So they said to sip on a couple of tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and that took care of my reflux. I no longer have reflux. Luckily, I have no side effects from being 30 plus years on bulimic. Not quite 30 if you want to do the math, but I got very, very lucky. It goes to show you how resilient the body is, and it just heals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you continue with the apple cider vinegar?
No, I no longer need the apple cider vinegar.
Okay, it was just for a period of time. How long? You had a couple of tablespoons a day?
2 tablespoons a day, or when you're experiencing the symptoms of reflux. So that would happen usually at night. So it wasn't every single night, but a couple times a week. Even after a nice fatty meal, I'd be like, oh, I feel some heartburn. I would just take a couple of tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and within minutes, it would go away, because the acid gets in there.
Yeah, which absolutely shows. I mean, I know, reflux can be too much acid as well, but it absolutely shows if it was lack of acid.
Right.
By putting more acid in, that was obviously the reason.
Yeah, and it helps with digestion and all that good stuff. So
you went looking for keto fairly recently. What led you to it? That was presumably, as you mentioned, losing weight a bit after menopause, was it? Is that why you originally went looking for keto?
Yeah, well, what happened was I'm always Googling what's the next best diet, and I think it was an advertisement on Facebook I saw for these young kids that were intermittent fasting, but then they were eating garbage, as I like to say, at night. They would eat, all their calories was just one meal at night. And I got very intrigued because these kids were cut and built and looked fantastic. And I thought, what is this intermittent fasting? And that's what led me down the rabbit hole. I started Googling and researching intermittent fasting, which of course led me to fasting. And the first thing I did was I bought the complete guide to fasting. Dr. Fung is such a genius, and his writing is just fantastic. And I thought, wow, this fasting cures all kinds of ailments, helps with body fat. Your body becomes a fat burning machine. And all this, I'm going, ding, ding, ding. This is what I've needed when I was 20. And then I started listening to podcasts, discovered the Fasting Talk and 2 Keto Dudes, because of course, fasting and keto go hand in hand. And of course, he mentions that in his book. And then it was like, keto, okay, what do I need to learn? How do I perfect this? I went out and I bought a glucose monitoring strip, and I was testing ketones and glucose. And over the past 7 months, I just feel like I've learned so much and I have so much to offer. So I started my webpage, Just for little tips. I'm not offering any services. I have a job. But that's basically how I discovered keto, and also experimenting with different types of keto. You can do the caveman where you're eating mostly protein, because I find, and I don't know if this is maybe some residual from my years of bulimia, but I can't tolerate cauliflower and broccoli very well. So I have a much lower vegetable kind of carbohydrate tolerance as far as my stomach's concerned. My glucose is fine. I can eat cauliflower all day long, but it tears me up. So I've just been dabbling with all different types of keto, from caveman to, when to intermittent fast as well. And I've come up with a couple of ideas as far as eating keto 5 days a week. It's called the 5-1-1, where you intermittent fast 5 days a week. And then the 1-1, Saturday, is kind of eat all day. Don't intermittent fast. Allow yourself a keto breakfast. Staying keto, but eating from morning until night. And then Sunday is a 24-hour fast. It's called the 5-1-1. And I've been dabbling with that most recently.
So what's on the 5 days? I was getting confused there. It sounded like you were fasting for 5 days.
No. I do throw in extended fasts every 2 months. But the 5-1-1 is, so Monday through Friday, each day is the same. I intermittent fast till about 2 p.m.
Oh, I see. So you have a 16-8 window, or you have your chosen window.
Exactly. And that window can change on your schedule, but basically I definitely intermittent fast Monday through Friday. That window, sometimes I eat at 2 o'clock, sometimes I'm not hungry till 4 o'clock, but I intermittent fast Monday through Friday.
Yeah, you basically extend your fasting window as much as you can.
Yeah.
Monday to Friday, and then Saturday you have a full-on keto feed up.
I eat, and it's actually hard because sometimes you're not hungry in the morning. You get so used to that intermittent fasting, but I purposely make myself have a light breakfast, or I'll have a bulletproof coffee in the morning. Your body will get used to anything you do. So it's called mixing it up. I learned that from Megan Ramos, and I mix it up once a week on Saturday. I try to make it Saturday. Now, this can vary. You can have 5-1-1 anytime. You can do, Monday and Tuesday Monday be your eating day. It really depends on your schedule. It just works for me, and it's easy for me to remember that Saturday's my eating day. I get very excited because I could wake up and have whatever I want, although I'm usually not hungry, so I shouldn't say too excited. And then Sunday, I throw in a 24-hour fast, so I will eat Sunday, but it won't be till 9. It depends on what time I finish eating on Saturday night. Usually it's around 9 p.m. So 9 p.m. on Sunday, I can have a small meal before I go to bed. And then I start the whole thing again on Monday. And that has been fantastic.
Interesting. Yes. So that's what you're finding now is the keto that's working well for you in combination with intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing every single day. And not that I have a weight to lose, I really don't, but it's the whole body composition thing I'm trying to change. And I thought, well, I'm not looking, it's almost like my body just got used to doing the same thing every day, day in and day out. And then when I heard Megan Ramos say, mix it up, people, you need to, your body is very, very smart, very adaptable. And her analogy is so brilliant, but she does the analogy of like an income. If you have a certain amount of income, you are going to learn what to spend and what not to spend according to that income. And so if I'm feeding my body the same thing every day, then that's what I get, and my body will stop, and that's it. And if you want to mix it up, or you're having a weight stall, you got to take a day where you just give it more. You give it excess. And then it says, this isn't all I get. All right. And it continues to burn your fat for fuel. And then it's just mixing it up. I learned that was her analogy, and I loved it. She said, what if you get a pay cut, and then, you really have to save. So instead of giving yourself a pay cut, you give yourself a big old raise and you increase your calories, and then your body starts spending again. So that was her analogy, and I loved it, and it really rang true to me. I noticed I was just at a plateau where it was the same thing, and I love the food, so I don't mind eating the same thing day in or day out. But when I heard her say mix it up, I thought that's fantastic. And I'll even include a little bit of extra carbohydrate on that Saturday. I do that in the evening time because it helps you sleep. And when I say a carb, I'm talking about maybe a sweet potato with some butter, a good carb. I don't eat a half a bag of chips or anything like that, although that wouldn't be the worst thing, but that's how I do it on my Saturday. I make sure there's some carbohydrate in there so your body can burn both fuels. You know, you don't want to just become a fat burner because, again, the body's smart and it'll get used to it. So,
yes, it's interesting, isn't it, that some people do find they need to have these so-called carb ups every now and then, but then there's a huge group of people as well who find that it doesn't agree with them. I mean, me, for example, if my carbs get above a certain point, if I start to get carb creep, it's one of the ways I can identify it, is that my cravings go up. So for me, a weekly carb up would be running the risk of ending up on a carb spiral. So this is where it's interesting, I think, where everyone has their own way of doing things.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily apply to someone else. So your way probably wouldn't work for me, and my way probably wouldn't work for you.
Yeah.
Especially as I've been getting very into cauliflower mash lately. So that sounds like
You're so
it wouldn't
lucky.
work for you at all, and it's delicious.
I'm jealous. Oh.
Yes, it was actually Taffy on our Christmas podcast. We were talking about how to make it and using frozen cauliflower. It's actually a great way to use cauliflower. But I've always been really sniffy about frozen vegetables because they tend to be a bit soggy, don't they? But actually it works perfectly for cauliflower mash, and also it ends up tasting, especially with the reheats. Taffy talked about reheating, and I make it and then I cook it in the oven, and then it ends up getting reheated the next day in the microwave, and the more you reheat it, the more it ends up tasting like potato mash. It really does. It really, really does.
It's actually
Delicious.
very upsetting that I can't have my cauliflower mash. I tried, and I always bought the frozen bags of cauliflower, and you can make the cauliflower fried rice. And I always thought of cauliflower as a vehicle for the butter. Get the butter in, and what a better way is dumping it on top of the cauliflower. But it really tears up my stomach. I have to be super careful with how much. I could have a couple of bites and I'm okay, so it's not like I can't have any, but it's not like I can have a nice big bowl, which is very sad for me.
That's a shame. And is it the same with all the cruciferous? So do you have the same issue with broccoli and kale and rocket, I think, comes under that. Yeah, what a shame. So while we're on that subject, tell me a bit about what your day-to-day does look like then, when you're intermittent fasting or when you're eating, basically.
Yeah. Basically, I do a lot of meal preparation. So I have all this stuff in my refrigerator ready to go for my meals when I'm, breaking my intermittent fast. But I will take a pork shoulder and roast it for 7 hours. You know, you rinse it, you pat it dry, you get it to room temperature, and then I get this like salt mixture of just salt, and it doesn't have to be exact, but it's garlic powder and onion powder, and you cover it, and you put that in the oven for 7 hours, and then at the 8th hour, you turn the oven up to 500 to get a nice crisp on it. And why I'm bringing that up is because I will make that and shred the pork, and then boom, I have a big bag of shredded pork in the refrigerator. I do that as well with egg salad. I'll make, I have an Instant Pot, and I hard boil my eggs in the Instant Pot, which is a whole other. Actually, I was going to come up with a book with keto and Instant Pot, but it was done way before I came up with it. So there are some great Instant Pot keto books out there. But anyway, I make my eggs in my Instant Pot, and I will have a big container of egg salad in the refrigerator as well. And in the freezer, I always have grass-fed beef patties ready to go. So my daily keto is when I break my fast at 2 o'clock, I will make myself a bulletproof coffee. I was drinking bulletproof coffees before I discovered fasting and keto. So I missed my bulletproof coffee. So when I break my fast, I thought, what a better way to start getting my fats in. And I will make myself the most delicious bulletproof coffee with a little bit of butter, MCT oil, and my collagen. And when you become, they say you stop producing collagen in your early 30s. So collagen for me has also been a game changer. I definitely wanted to talk to you about my collagen. I write about this in my blog too. And I found Perfect Keto came out with a chocolate collagen. and I put 1 scoop in. So now not only do I have my flavorings and my fats, and I break my fast with that. And we could talk more about the collagen, but I've seen an improvement in my nails, hair, skin. Firm believer in collagen.
I was going to say, so you've actually seen a difference, because it's something that I've read about and people talking about the marvelous benefits, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But, to actually speak to someone who's seen the before and after difference, you physically
I do, and
it
takes a while. It takes about 3 to 4 months, and I was getting some little spots here where I was losing hair, just like my mom. She gave me the essential tremor. She gave me a little bit of thinning, and all that has gone away. And that's not in my mind. So I know it's the collagen because it's the only, it could be the fasting too and the growth hormone, but I'm going to peg it on the collagen. So I break my fast and I have my bulletproof coffee with my collagen. I enjoy that. And then my window is open. My eating window is open, and I will have pulled pork. Like an example of one of my first meals is a nice big plate of pulled pork. No vegetables because they tear up my stomach. Otherwise, I would say get your cauliflower mash on there with some more butter. But on top of my pulled pork, I use the Primal Kitchen Chipotle flavored mayo. Oh, woot woot. Not the plug. I mean, I'm sure you can just get avocado mayonnaise and flavor it up with Chipotle, but he makes a fantastic product. I have like 3 or 4 bottles in my pantry at all time. I go through it quite frequently. I'll put a big dollop of my fats on my pulled pork, not to lose train of thought, and that will be like my first meal. And then if I'm hungry after that, I'll have some egg salad, and it's all prepared in my refrigerator, which is one of my big tips, is to get these foods in your refrigerator prepared. And maybe a handful or 2 of macadamia nuts is another go-to. I also make keto ice cream that I have in the freezer, but basically around 6 o'clock I'm pretty full. I've eaten from 2 to 6 and I stop, and then I would start the same thing the next day. That's basically what my keto looks like these days. Very, very few vegetables.
I was going to say, so pretty low carb. I mean, you're, with the exception of the nuts and a couple of other things, you're veering towards, zero carb carnivore there, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I am pretty low carb. I don't count macros. I will not count macros. What I like to do is 2 hours after a meal, I'll check my glucose and make sure it's 90 or less. And then I know I'm good. Because I used to make all the breads. When you start keto, you do all the things. You bake and I've perfected all kinds of bread recipes. And then I started getting a little diligent and testing 2 hours after I ate. And I must have had some insulin sensitivity or insensitivity. And I can't eat all those breads and desserts and fat bombs and all that stuff. But I have found a seed bread, which I'll have to share that recipe with you. Make 2 sunny side up eggs and you put it over the seed bread. And it is out of this world phenomenal.
That sounds yummy. Basically, what is this? There's a seed and nut bread I make, actually, I made it ages ago. It cost a bloody fortune. It's decent sized loaf tin, but because you pack in, I think it's something like 4 or 5 cups of seeds to 2 cups of nuts, and then 6 eggs or something.
Oh,
and I thought,
no, mine's very different. Yeah.
I thought it's going to be disgusting. It's going to be this weird seed nut omelette, but you don't, all the eggs do is bind it and you end up with this solid loaf.
Wow.
But like I say, it cost a fortune, but it is nice and it slices thin, so it's good. But what's your one? It sounds nice.
I don't have it memorized here. I did just make it, though. And that's the kind of thing I do. I like Sunday, I will prepare all kinds of food for the week. My seed bread has 2 cups of sunflower seeds. Now, this makes 2 loaves. It's got hemp hearts, a little bit of almond flour. There was no egg in it. You actually use flax meal and water. And then in a pan, so you mix all the dry ingredients in a big bowl, which is basically that. Sunflower seeds, flax, a little bit of water was in there, the hemp hearts, and then seasoning, Italian seasoning, however you really want. You could season it any way you want. I do have this on my webpage, this recipe, and my Instagram too. I took a picture of it. In a saucepan, you take 2 cups, this is for 2 loaves, of mushrooms. In a little bit of avocado oil, which is all I will cook with for the heat point, and garlic, okay? And you saute that until the mushrooms are cooked. And then you put that in a food processor and get it into a mush. When you put that mush in with the dry ingredients and mix it up, and then you press it into 2 loaf pans, This seed bread is so delicious. And with the sunny side up eggs running all over it, it's all I can do. I have it almost every day.
Interesting. I was amazed when you brought the mushrooms in. I wasn't expecting that at all. I can see the flaxseed, and often flaxseed flour, and psyllium husk does the same thing. I make crackers with those. And when you add water and it makes like a glue, and as that bakes, it sets solid, doesn't it? So I could see the logic of that for making the bread. But the mushroom in there, that obviously does something. It sounds delicious. I'm definitely going to try that.
You'll love it. And
they're useful things like that, aren't they? And I've done it when I've made loaves. And you wait for it to cool and you slice it up, and you can freeze it in the serving size that you like. So say, 2 slices or whatever. Freeze them in nice little individual packages, and they can come out. So they might sometimes be quite expensive to make, but you can actually often get quite a lot out of it and make it last, so there's no waste.
I couldn't agree with you more. And having it in the freezer, I usually just take the loaf out of the pan and I freeze the whole loaf, because one loaf in the refrigerator is a week's worth, and I just slice it, put my eggs on it, and it just helps to have all the keto foods good to go right there in the refrigerator, because my family is not keto. I am trying so hard. My 17-year-old daughter just thinks I'm going to drop dead of a heart attack any moment. She does not understand that saturated fats are good. And I bought Fathead book to have her read it and explain it. And she just refuses. She thinks she knows it all. And then my 21-year-old son, he's actually more open-minded and has some friends. And he's heard of keto. And he said, Mom, if you get your blood tested and everything looks good, maybe I'll start keto. So I'm just not ready to do that yet, because I know the results are going to be good, but
fine. That's good for him to be watching you, and for you to be the example. So when he sees all those boxes ticked, he might be ready to give it a go too.
Exactly. I'm just leading by example and trying to, hopefully they'll see. I mean, I look fantastic. I feel great. And I've never discussed my eating disorder with them. So that's why it's also kind of vulnerable for me to just throw this out there. And I don't want to talk to them too much about it. Like, go look at my website. My eating disorder is gone, because they didn't really know I had an eating disorder. So it's just one of those tricky topics where I want to spread the word, but I also don't want to go around and go, hey, I was bulimic for 30 years and this is what saved me. And
it tends to be something that's very secretive, isn't it? That's done. How soon after you started keto did you find those urges started dissipating?
Very quickly. Very, very quickly. I jumped right in with both feet with keto, and they told me to eat avocados. I started eating avocados, and within a week, I'm trying to think I would say once a week I would probably binge and purge, depending on how much exercise I was doing and how much I was starving myself. So my bulimia wasn't always a once a week kind of thing, but I started keto, went full in, also the intermittent fasting. I was just in. And I noticed about a week went by and I thought, wow, I don't even have the urge. I'm not hungry. This is great. And then 2 weeks went by. So it was very, very quick. I literally started the ketogenic diet and noticed, wow, I am not binging. I am not even thinking about binging. I don't want the garbage. And what you find, what I wanted everybody to know too, is people that are starting this, I hate calling it a diet. Why I'm calling it the ketogenic diet, I don't know. It's a lifestyle. When you start this lifestyle, you think, oh, am I going to miss my garbage? I'm going to miss that big bowl of popcorn. I used to purge on popcorn, and I was a salty, crunchy kind of girl. I never was much into the sweets, although I love a good fat bomb every now and then now. But I would just long for, let's go to the movies so I can have a huge bucket the size of my head popcorn, and then I'll purge it out later. That's how I used to think. It's terrible. Over time on the ketogenic lifestyle, I went and I had a piece of popcorn after I was fat adapted and ketogenic, because I thought, oh, I can have a day now where I can eat some, and it tasted like cardboard.
I was going to say, what are these disgusting bits of cardboard I'm eating?
I don't even enjoy it. You can't enjoy it now because I don't know if it's the taste buds that change or the wiring in the brain that changes, but whatever it is, you won't miss the garbage, which is just, if somebody told me that, I would have even been more excited to start this. I thought I was going to start this and break it, and I didn't realize it was a lifestyle. I thought it was a diet. But the more I'm on it, this is my life now. I could never go back. As a matter of fact, when my 17-year-old, who's turning 18 in February, goes off to college, I can't wait to just revamp my entire pantry. It's going to be 100% keto. Now I have to have this little cabinet of my keto stuff, a little section in my refrigerator where my keto stuff is. And when she moves out, which I will miss her tremendously, and I'm not looking forward to it, but it's going to be, that's my life. And I wish I could get my husband on board, but he's an Ohio boy, and he's still potatoes, and, he's a meat and potatoes kind of guy. The only thing he does do, but he's done this his entire life, is he's always intermittent fasted. He never eats, he has 1 cup of coffee with 1 little teeny tiny creamer in it until 5 o'clock at night. But his evening meal is whatever he wants.
Yes, but I think with a lot of these things that if you've been doing that, if you've been fairly moderate with your carbage, if you've been exercising perhaps a bit of intermittent fasting, if you haven't gone to any kind of extreme from an early age, you don't develop the kind of problems that you then have to correct.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, we all tend to say things like, oh, I wish I'd found keto when I was younger. And that is true.
Yeah.
But often if we hadn't got into the kind of mess we did, we wouldn't necessarily have to be so restrictive. It kind of just depends, doesn't it? Your individual makeup and the individual problems that you have. But yeah. I can see someone like your son, even though he eats carbs, they're not the devil necessarily for a lot of people. So it sounds like he has quite a healthy approach, and he won't develop any of the issues that he then needs to correct. It's funny, my sister was saying the same thing, that she noticed the same sort of approach. I don't really fancy having breakfast. We've been told for years, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and so you feel a bit guilty when you think, actually, I don't feel like breakfast, I'm going to skip it.
Yeah.
And I never did as a teenager. I never wanted breakfast. And she was saying, so she thought she would just go with that, and I'll just skip breakfast. I'm not hungry.
Right.
I say maybe have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee or something, but nothing else, and start eating at lunchtime. And she noticed that dropped a few pounds, and it was just a bit easier to maintain her weight. And so it shows, doesn't it, that just bringing in a little change in an otherwise quite typical diet. She tends to eat, she eats very healthily. She's moderate carb, I would say. She's certainly not high carb and a lot of processed foods and things like that, but she eats a lot higher carb than I do.
Yeah, we probably all would have gone that route until the cereal companies decided to advertise, eat, 6 meals a day, eat. They want to sell their bars. They want to sell their, I don't know if it's all the cereal companies, but the promotion of eating 6 meals a day. Think of your insulin is never down.
Exactly.
I mean, no wonder there's childhood obesity everywhere. My daughter literally thinks that she will drop if she doesn't eat 6 times a day. And I'm like, Ari, please read this book. It will show you your insulin does not have to be up. That is the fat storage hormone. You're never getting rid of it. And she's not overweight. She's very, very active, and she looks great. So I'm not harping that much right now. But, I just think of the industry and the advertising that's going on. And 6 small meals a day. Wow.
Exactly. It's those snacks. I can remember the big hype when I was a child in the 70s, when the adverts started coming out. In the UK, I don't know if you have it in the States, but we have this thing called a finger of fudge, and it's a little chocolate bar, and it's smaller than normal chocolate bars are. And this advert came out, and I think it was something like, a finger of fudge is just enough to give your kids a treat. And it was this thing, and these kids eating them in their break times. And, it's not enough. And Milky Way was another one. It's not enough to spoil your meal. So it's a little snack, but it's just enough to take the edge off.
Yeah. Just enough to kick up your insulin and make you fat for the rest of your life.
Exactly, because you're just eating at every point. There's breakfast before you go to school. There's a snack in break time.
Terrible.
There's lunch. There's a snack in afternoon break time. There's often a snack when you get home from school. And then there's dinner. I mean, yes, apart from the children who have such a great metabolism that they've inherited from their parents, but all the other children are going to start developing a metabolic disorder, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain that's why childhood obesity is what it is in the United States. It's just they're eating constantly. There's no break. Dr. Fung talked about that on one of the podcasts, how, even in the 60s, which I was born in 65, but when I came home from school, there was no snacking, you'll save your appetite till dinner, and there was no obesity way back then. But now, ever since they started advertising, breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack, that's where all the problems, and it's all chemistry. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that when your insulin is up, you are storing fat. As soon as your insulin's gone, the train goes back and you're burning fat. So just keep the train going straight.
Exactly. You can't do the two things at once, can you? It's the adverts, it's the companies. I've just remembered the next line to that jingle was, which is so ironic. It's full of Cadbury's goodness. What goodness is that exactly?
Oh, yeah.
Sugar.
Yep.
Sugar to hype you up.
Yep. Unbelievable. Yeah.
So you were talking about what your keto looks like and how it's developed from where you started. How did you start keto? You've developed it into this 5-1-1 system that you're talking about, but you started with the typical sort of basic approach?
I like to quote the two keto dudes here, bacon and eggs.
Yeah, bacon and eggs.
That's how I started. I said, what? I can have bacon and eggs? Okay. That's all I had to hear, So that's how I started. I was also never a real morning eater, never hungry in the morning. But when I got hungry around 9 or 10, I made myself bacon and eggs. And that's basically, and hamburgers, big staple of mine. I would have a hamburger patty with mayonnaise on it. And again, when I first started, I was all into the vegetables, the cauliflower mash. It wasn't until, I realized, my stomach would be so bloated all the time. And that's when I really had to start cutting out. I realized, well, that's probably the cauliflower. And the more I lowered the vegetables, the better I felt. And making all the things. I thought I was going to miss the crunchy bread, the crackers. And I found now after testing with my glucose kit, what breads and such I can eat. The seed bread is a good one. The crackers I absolutely love. But the brownies and the cookies and all that, I'll test my glucose, 2 hours later, and that's not working for me. So I do advise that everybody get like a glucose monitor, not to go crazy, but just to see what could be affecting your glucose, because each one of us is different. The other thing is the sweeteners. I was going to say, it sounds like it might have been a reaction to sweeteners. I can't do xylitol. Xylitol and me, nope. And I'm kind of bummed because I came up with this fantastic little trick at night where I bought an ice shaver. You could get it for $40 on Amazon. You put a bunch of ice in it and it comes out like a snow cone. And then I was flavoring it up with some artificial sweetener. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use the Zip Fizz because I'll get my electrolytes. They are delicious. And I would pour it over the shaved ice and mix it. And they have grape and raspberry. And I would kind of eat that while I'm watching TV. I thought I was doing myself such a big favor. And I noticed I was actually putting on weight because I would also have the fat-filled meals. And then that would be kind of my dessert. Unbeknownst to me, that xylitol was spiking my glucose. So taking me right out of ketosis on top of a fat-filled meal. And then I discovered that xylitol and me don't mix. So I stick with the stevia and I discovered monk fruit sweetener recently. And actually, Keto Connect, the two young kids, now they have a podcast as well called Keto for Normies, but they had a YouTube and they tested all the sugars and it took them a week. They would take the artificial sweetener of choice and then test their glucose right on television, an hour later. I think they only waited an hour. We were supposed to wait, I believe it's 2 hours, but they waited an hour and test their glucose. And when they tested the monk fruit and they were both still in the 80s, I thought, let me try some monk fruit. It's very natural and I buy the monk fruit drops on Amazon and does not affect my glucose. And so I use monk fruit sweetener as well as the stevia.
Yeah, there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but he did the exact same thing. And I think he added the sweetener to his coffee every day. And he did it over a week, 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
And he was amazed. I can't remember, it was one of the syrups, something like a yacon syrup, something like that. And he loved it.
Yeah.
And he was astounded when his glucose just went through the roof, and he was really disappointed because he had to scrap it from his diet.
Yeah. And some people can tolerate it. That's why you just have to test yourself. There are some people
Exactly. That's where it's worth testing, isn't it? Because a lot of people love xylitol. I mean, I won't have it in the house anyway because of the dogs, but I know that some people, it doesn't affect them at all. And some people, it does tend to spike their glucose quite a lot. Yeah. Erythritol, for me, seems to be a standard is fine. I don't have any reaction to it at all. So it sounds like you went into keto really, and I think as a lot of people do, as a weight loss tool, but then you found all these other benefits that came from it. Yeah. And I always think that actually, that if weight loss was the only thing you got from it, that actually it would be quite difficult to stick to, because it would just be another one of those diets that you tried and you'd lost weight on, but then sooner or later, for some reason, you'd go back off it again and you'd put all the weight on and you'd go looking for the next diet. But I think what makes it different, really different, for the people who stick with it are the other things that it impacts in your life.
Yeah.
And for you to have your tremors almost gone, the cravings to binge and purge gone completely.
Yeah.
That's something that you're never going to want to come back from.
Never. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm grateful. I just want to thank you too, because of all we live in such a wonderful world where I can just go find a podcast and listen to other people's stories and get some information, and just a wealth of knowledge has come over me while reading, listening, and watching. And I'm just grateful for everybody who's out there talking about it, trying to spread the word. And I'm just grateful. I mean, you could look back and go, oh, I wish, like you said, I wish I started this when I was 20. Well, maybe I wouldn't have done it, when I was 20.
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't have been ready. You wouldn't have been in the right place. I don't think I would have. These things come along at the right time sometimes, don't they?
Yeah.
And talking about spreading the word, tell me a bit more about your website. Is that something that you started as soon as you started keto? It sounds a bit like. So I think that's quite a good thing, isn't it? To follow someone when they start. That's what was so great about the Two Keto Dudes podcast.
Yeah.
The whole setup where Richard was the guy who'd been doing it for a while, and Carl we were following from day one.
Right.
But it's very useful and informative, isn't it, to follow that, because you hear about the things that happen. What's it like in that first week? What happens when you have cravings? What happens if you're feeling a bit crappy and you're having the keto flu? And how does he sort it? And how quickly does it happen? And it's really useful, isn't it? So tell me about your website. Yeah,
that's exactly why I started my web pages, because I realized, I didn't really grasp the concept of sodium. Just a small thing like sodium and how much that can help with your intermittent fasting and with keto. You don't get enough sodium, and I hated licking salt, so I got some sodium tablets. Now you'll hear pros and cons, but for me, I don't like to lick on salt, so I just take my 2 milligrams every morning with a big tall glass of water, and I get my sodium for the day. But those little tips, I thought, I'm going to come up with a website and just talk about these things that aren't that prevalently talked about when you start a ketogenic diet. The magnesium, potassium, you don't have to worry about. If your sodium's up, your potassium will stay in your cells, unless you're getting some cramps and what have you. But basically, that's why I started it. I thought, okay, FatFueled at 50 sounds very catchy.
It's great. Yes, it's a great domain name. I like the name.
Yeah, and people were just inquiring so much. Why, you look so good. You're 50. I can't believe it. Blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put it out there and start a web page with nothing behind it other than just sharing my wealth of knowledge that I got. And I started coming up with all these cute little tips and finding recipes and tweaking them. And I thought, well, I'm going to just share this. And it's not very big. Again, I just started in June, so I'm young as far as all these people. You can search out their web pages, and they are just pages and pages of recipes and this and that. But my little thing is just like the tweaks. Like I thought Zip Fizz was a great way to, get my electrolytes. And then I found that the xylitol in there did not work with me. So I put that in my website. Yeah, I was thinking of maybe writing a book too. And that was one of the key motivators of me starting the webpage, was to advertise for my book, FatFueled at 50. But I am just not a writer. I'm more of a talker. So until I can talk my way into a book, and maybe
audiobook is what
I
you
need. An audiobook. I really do. I really do. And I'm dabbling with that. I just got a job as a physician's assistant, so I'm starting to work more, but I just had to get something out there. So I did the old, website, which is now attached to an Instagram page, because I guess all the kids are doing Instagram. And at 50, I'm not very technically savvy. You saw how I was with these earphones and my computer. I'm like, what is going on? But I'm figuring it out slowly. I think the ketones are helping me. Because I'm getting a lot more done than I ever thought possible. I thought, wow, I know how to copy and paste, and I know how to do this. And so, yeah, I just wanted to spread the good word of keto. I wanted to be one of the voices out there. And then on top of it, I really didn't hear anything or read anything or see anything about somebody that suffered with bulimia and boom, got cured. I never read anything about an essential tremor, and I thought, well, I'm going to be that voice, and I'm going to get on there and start talking about my little tricks that I found here and there, and how this can help you ease into your 50s and feel like you're in your 30s or 40s. And I was going to say 40s, but I'm going to go out there and say 30s, because that's how good I feel. I'm an avid tennis player. I play 3 to 4 days a week, and I'm playing people in their 20s and 30s and beating them and feeling great. And they look at me and they go, you are not 50. There's no way I can't even tell them I'm 52 because they don't believe I'm 50. So it's like, okay, I think this keto is really keeping me youthful. And I got to just be one of the voices out there.
That's fantastic. And talking of tips and tricks, we usually wind up the show with a top tip. But I've got a feeling we're going to have a few top tips from you. So
you are right. Okay. Well, listening to your podcast, I knew you were going to ask me for some top tips. And I know I thanked you already, but I do love your podcast. Okay. Enough of that. My number one top tip, and I'll try to go through them quickly. I have quite a few. Top one. My one is get a glucose monitor. I like the Precision Extra, because everybody reacts to glucose differently, carbs differently. And you might be able to, if you're young, if you're metabolically damaged, you got to watch your glucose. But the only way to see what's going on is to get a glucose monitor. 2 hours after your meal, you prick your little finger and you make sure your glucose is less than 90. So that's one top tip.
That's the thing. You need to start, don't you, with a baseline before you have your meal. That's what I've always found is you take your baseline measurement before your meal. And then the 2 hours afterwards, you can actually follow the trajectory however often you like. But 2 hours is when you're supposed to reset back to your baseline. That's why it's kind of quite important to have the baseline, because you need to know what you're getting back to.
That's very smart.
Because it's also an indicator, actually. So you have your baseline here. This is me doing hand gestures that nobody can see.
Like in the 80s, is your glucose normally in the 80s when you test?
I go on a different measurement,
right.
I'm not sure how that relates.
Right.
Yes, but whatever your normal is, whatever your normal sort of fasting type glucose would be, but your pre-meal level. And then you have your meal, and the idea is, and that's where it can be quite useful actually to follow it in 30-minute intervals, because you see it go up, and ideally it shouldn't go up too high. So that's another thing that you can see the reaction to particular foods. If you test every 30 minutes, you can see what it hits at the highest point as well. So for example, I had a real craving for some butternut squash. And I know that was going to be on the carb limit. I knew it was a bit high, but I thought, well, maybe it's okay. And I made some soup. And as soon as I tasted it, it tasted like I dumped a load of sugar in it. And I knew. So I straight away, I got out the blood glucose and I watched it. And that spike went absolutely through the roof. Whereas if I was to plot that curve after bacon and eggs, say, you would get a spike, but it would be much, much of a calmer slope. And then you watch it as it comes back down. But what's interesting is that if you have a big insulin reaction, not necessarily your blood glucose spiking, but you can find that that curve drops below your baseline and then comes back up. And that can be indicative of an insulin spike. And that's where it can be useful for testing things like, I believe, Fung and Ramos have been talking about stevia being a problem like that they found it doesn't have an impact on blood glucose, but it is having an impact on insulin. So obviously that's something you want to avoid. So try that next time.
Yeah, I will. I absolutely will. I wish there was a home test for insulin, but...
Oh, yes, me too. I'm sure it won't be too far off.
That would be great. Because glucose strips are cheap compared to those stupid ketone strips, which are like I only check my ketones when I really, really want to know if I'm in ketosis. But glucose strips are cheap enough to do that. So I'm going to definitely do that. My second tip was to start intermittent fasting. You know, once you start keto, and then you can do the intermittent fasting, and then dabble into extended fasting. Why extended fasting? It resets your gut biome, the healing powers. I think the longer I fasted, and my greatest fast was 5 days, that's when a lot of healing happens. And I don't say, but that's my second tip is don't be scared to extend fast. Start with 1 day and then go to 2 days and whatever you can do. But I really feel that extended fasting is where a lot of my healing happened. And if you're going to try the extended fasting, you have to be diligent on the sodium. And my tip that I have on my webpage, which has helped me tremendously, is you want to take about 10 milligrams of sodium for each day you fast. So in the morning I take 2, they're 1 milligram pills, and I do that until I reach 10 milligrams.
That's about 2 teaspoons.
Yeah. And then magnesium I take in the form of Calm, which is a powder, and it helps you sleep at night. And I make sure I take 2 teaspoons of Calm for my magnesium while I'm fasting. Or you could take a Epsom salt bath also to get your magnesium. But I just like to take it in the powder form. It's something to drink while you're fasting too. It's warm and it tastes good. And so then my number 3 tip is to do all the meal preps, to have the food in the refrigerator. I feel like that's key for everybody on keto. So you don't go ahead, especially beginners. You know, once you're fat adapted and you're going along, you can stop at McDonald's, or not McDonald's, I shouldn't use that one as an example, even Wendy's. Get a Baconator, take the bun off, and you're set to go. But until you get there and you have the strength to take the buns off and not get have it in the refrigerator. The pulled pork, there's so many recipes on Pinterest. If you Google keto, you'll get 3,000 recipes, but the egg salad, the ground beef with butter, have all that stuff in the refrigerator ready to go so that when you do get hungry, you have your meals there.
I think that's a very good tip because that, especially in the early days, that's the real danger zone, isn't it? It's when you're really, really hungry and you've just got to grab something fast.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be in a household where there are carby things available to grab.
Exactly.
That's likely what you're going to do in those early days if you've got to spend half an hour preparing something as an alternative. So if you've got those things ready to go, then you'll just grab those things instead.
Exactly. And bacon. Who doesn't want bacon 24/7? So I always have it prepared in a Ziploc. I usually crumble it up and make some crumbles, and I always have bacon. So if I do have to even heat up my hamburger, I've got some bacon to munch on while I'm waiting.
And I remember it's one of Carl's favorites.
Yeah.
Is to have cooked bacon and then you put some cream cheese on.
Oh,
and
I love
actually,
it.
I've been doing that this week with, it's not actually Borsan, it's a generic brand I get here, but the peppery one, which I love. Mm-hmm. Pepper Borsan smeared on a strip of bacon, crispy bacon. Delicious snack. Absolutely perfect. Can't go wrong with it.
No. Can't go wrong with it. Having it in the refrigerator at all times is key. And then another tip I had was thinking of keto as a lifestyle, not a diet that you're going to go off of. This is it. This is the new norm. And having that mental clarity about it being a lifestyle. I think is a big tip. This isn't something you're going to start and then go off. I mean, there are variations of that. If I was going to go on a cruise ship with my family, and I'm not metabolically damaged, I'm not playing around with any sort of, terrible ailment that I'm trying to heal. But if I wanted to go off for a week, granted, I could. And I'm not saying that should never happen. But if you think of keto as a lifestyle, generally, I think that's a good tip. So then you can just kind of stay the course, stay on keto. And it's not bad. It's it's the greatest lifestyle I could have imagined for myself.
And there are enough people now, aren't there? There are enough groups. There are online,
so much support out there.
Facebook groups, the forum, podcasts. There are enough people. If you don't have real life people that you can share it with in your immediate family or social circle, you've got these huge groups of people all around the world that you can connect with and share things and share that lifestyle with.
Yeah. It's a great keto family friendly world out there. And then I jotted down some like positive self-talk. When you really think about the voices that you kind of wake up in the morning, and this was more so before I started this lifestyle, there was just a lot of negative talk. And I was listening to podcasts, and if you really listen to those voices telling you're not good enough, you still have fat there. Notice it. Say, what is that? And then kick it out and fill it with positive thoughts. And I'm fantastic. And this is, I'm lucky to be alive on this planet, and fill negative thought with positive thought. And that has really helped me with so many aspects of my life and feeling good about myself. Because, even with the whole bulimia thing, I could hear, you stupid idiot, why did you start? You hear these voices, and then you got to just, whoa, where did that come from? I would never talk to my daughter that way. Why am I talking to myself that way? So I do advocate that you should positive self-talk, even if you have to force it in the beginning. Look in the mirror, say positive things about yourself, love yourself like you're loving the little girl you used to be. And I've been doing that too.
Exactly. I think it's always worth remembering, however much you might regret parts of your life, regret things that you did, like you were saying, you might regret the whole eating disorder side. However, you have to remember that is part of you. That's part of what got you to where you are today.
True.
It's part of what shaped the person you are today. Yeah. And by saying, I'm okay, I'm pretty cool. So I need to accept and embrace all those parts of me that got me here.
Yeah.
Neither one is better or worse than the other. They're all just parts.
We're all individual, we're all here, and we're all fantastic, and no more negative talk. When you hear those voices say something negative, laugh at it and switch it up. So that's just your ego talking. It's terrible. So those are my pointers. I could probably go on and on, but maybe I should save something for my book.
Yes, you need to save them for your audio book. You can have a whole chapter on top tips.
Yeah, that's really it. Intuitive eating is another topic that we could go dive into. That's just, thinking about what you're really in the mood to eat, and and that's how people know, like, if they really need a carb up. If you really feel like you need something, just intuitive eating.
Yes, that's a good point, actually. And I think it's something that needs to wait until you've been keto for a while.
Absolutely.
I think that keto does, after a while, put you back in tune with the signals your body is trying to give you.
Oh, I could not agree with you more. Yeah.
So you get to a certain point, but don't do intuitive eating when you're in week 1.
Nope. Because
your body is going to be screaming, give me carbs, give me carbs. And don't listen. Don't listen to that voice at that point.
No, I agree completely.
Yes, and it's funny, isn't it, how sometimes your body can scream out for certain things. Like, I can remember Kim Howerton was talking about this on her Facebook page, I think, once, that she would get real intense cravings for dark chocolate. And of course, there's a part of you saying, no, that's just crazy talk. You just want chocolate. Don't listen to that. But she actually found, when she looked at the ingredients and she thought about it and she actually put it together with things that were happening. Hold on a minute. This chocolate is making my headache better. There's a lot of magnesium in chocolate. So actually, yes, your body is actually saying to you, give me magnesium.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily give you a picture of magnesium tablets. It gives you a picture of some dark chocolate, which actually is what it needs. So it's very true. You can start listening to that just a little bit further on when it's got a bit more intelligent.
And I'm just finding now that I can, listen to the intuitiveness of my body and what it's asking for. But you're right. Start keto first.
Yeah, once it's got its keto brain switched on, you can start listening to it.
I agree.
Well, it's been fantastic talking to you today. I've really enjoyed it, Debbie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue listening to you. And if anybody wants to reach me, just FatFueled@50.com.
FatFueled@50, yes. And we'll put all your contact information in the show notes.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
To get the resources and links from the show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you want to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. If you fancy joining me on this exciting adventure and want to help me create new episodes, please go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/ketowoman or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman website. It's thanks to the two keto dudes that I'm hosting this podcast, so please consider heading to their Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com and help them bring you more podcasts like this one. Please help other people hear about and find this podcast by reviewing the show on iTunes and Facebook. Every star, preferably 5 of course, and review really helps. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support means the world to me. Thank you. This week's quote is from Karen Whitaker. When receiving intuitive information through your body, the more you listen, the more you hear. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.